Well, that hunt for efficiency is going to anchor our talk because this is something that I've become fascinated by with football. I believe, and maybe you disagree with me, that the NFL is almost in this late 1990s, early 2000s space, which is so bizarre because it's our most obsessed over sport. It's America's favorite sport. And yet it seems like it's not altogether systemically analyzed or analyzed in the way that baseball came to be. Now, I think many people would say that there are so many moving parts that it's impossible, therefore. But you often come up with these nuggets that make me go, do the people running football actually really understand it all that well? How much low-hanging fruit is out there? How much could an outsider suggest that would change things? You had an example where you had a stat on passing plays that started behind the line of scrimmage just not working out too well. And yet I will often see such plays. Could you go over that? And maybe that could be a little beachhead into this broader conversation.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things as it just relates to that topic of where are quarterbacks targeting passes on the field? Are they throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage or beyond the line of scrimmage? We have seen the way the defense has been played evolve over the years. Offense, I don't study other sports, so I can't speak to those. But as it relates to the NFL specifically and football in general, the rules have been changed over the years to help offenses a lot more than defenses. They've been given the upper hand. It's a lot easier to pass the football now. They've protected the quarterbacks a lot more. They protect the wide receivers and defenseless wide receivers a lot more. And it didn't initially, like, people didn't start throwing the ball like right away at a higher rate, but it's evolved to doing that when they realized, hey, these plays offer a lot more upside than run plays. And now we've got rules that are protecting us so we can execute some of these plays more frequently. But then defenses are starting to fight back over the last several years and try to prevent the big plays down the field from those pass plays, prevent those big gains. And they've been playing more of too high shell coverage, just like different cover 2, cover 4 looks where they're dropping safeties back. They're trying to get quarterbacks to throw the ball short and underneath versus over the top of the defense to prevent those quick scores or quick, 20, 30 plus yard gains on single plays, and instead make quarterbacks matriculate the ball down the field a little bit more frequently. They're also playing with a little bit lighter boxes and daring offensive coordinators to call run plays because they know that offensive coordinators now have learned that passing is more efficient. And so they want to pass the ball more, but now they're playing with lighter boxes to say, we'll let you pass, but you're still maybe only going to gain 5 or 6 yards on these pass plays. Will you dare try to run it on us? The Baltimore Ravens were notorious of doing that just last season with their light box counts in and throughout the playoffs. And I was just like, why aren't teams running the football a little bit more frequently, especially early in the game when you're not behind? And it's something that's rare for me to advocate for because I'm such a proponent of the most efficient plays are passes. But when a defense is playing like that, you have to try to attack them on the ground. They were the NFL's worst run defense because they played with light boxes, yet teams kept throwing the football on them, even at the beginning of the game when the score is 0-0. But as it relates to this specific topic, as teams are dropping back more and taking away the deeper passes, offensive coordinators are throwing the ball underneath a little bit more frequently. And the style of defense, I know eventually we're going to talk about like tight ends versus wide receivers and that argument. But one of the things that quarterbacks have been doing a little bit more frequently now, because there aren't just wide open receivers being found in man coverage and that he could just beat the guy and get the ball out relatively quickly. They're having to read the zones and they're having to hold on to the football a little bit longer. And oftentimes that's leading to plays that are designed that are being thrown behind the line of scrimmage. Obviously the quarterback, for every pass he has to make, he's going to be standing behind the line of scrimmage. But we're talking about where on the field is he targeting? And we are seeing like 23% of passes over the last couple of years being thrown behind the line of scrimmage. That was down to like 18% like 6-7 years ago. And it doesn't sound like much, but it is a fairly high rate, which passes are being thrown now behind the line of scrimmage. And not only is that efficiency not any longer even, and those passes were always inefficient, it's gotten significantly worse. The efficiency of passes thrown behind the line of scrimmage has declined on an almost annual basis for, over a decade now. And we are seeing far too many teams still throw the ball short without efficiency. And the best statistic, just the easiest way to simplify this for everybody out there, is that every single team in the NFL, there's 32 of them. Every single team, when they are throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage, they have negative EPA per pass attempt, meaning expected points added. It's a statistic, and they are poor. They are below average when they're throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage. All but 3 teams have positive EPA per attempt when they throw the ball beyond the line of scrimmage. So even the 5th worst passing attack, even the 6th worst passing attack in the NFL has a better efficiency throwing the ball when they throw the ball beyond the line of scrimmage than the very best offense in the NFL does when they throw the ball short of the line of scrimmage. So, I am hopeful that more teams this season, I wrote an article on it, published it on the website, trying to promote this. I do talk to some OCs and some head coaches that call plays. I'm trying to open their eyes to this factor that they need to be looking to try to attack these defenses, try to test them. These defenses, they want you to throw the ball short because it plays into what they're trying to do. So you have to figure out ways around that, and you can't just buy into what they're selling.
Yeah, there's some nuance. I'm sure there are some scenarios where throwing that pass would make sense. I would analogize it. You mentioned not following the other sports. It reminds me a little bit of basketball, where they changed the rules in the early 2000s and you couldn't have as much contact with offensive players. And there was a little bit of a lag between the changing of the game, because the game is just its rules, and the strategic response to it and understanding of what to do in accordance with it. And for a long time, teams continue to do too many post-ups. There are scenarios in the NBA where posting up makes sense. I'm not trying to be unnuanced with it, but it is just like the dumb guy take on it could be correct. The dumb guy could intuit that passing behind the line of scrimmage doesn't work out as often because you're farther from where you want to be. Similarly, having your back to your goal, that is the basket, might be suboptimal versus other methods and attempts of trying to score. And it appears as though there are just tried and true methods, quotation marks, that coaches are just addicted to, and they know way more about football on the granular level than observers. But I just wonder how much of it is held up to scrutiny and how much of it is tradition. I mean, do you think that they still punt too often, for instance, because that's been a talking point forever? And how much is something like that just about this is the way we've always done it versus this is logically, mathematically how we should be approaching it?
The funny part is, again, only speaking about NFL coaches, but to me, so much of that profession is animal instinct. It's like the animal kingdom out there, where the number one priority for these coaches is simply self-preservation. How do I keep my job? And the more that you stray away from the norm or tradition, as you indicate, the more likely you're going to be scrutinized after the game. What if you tried something and it didn't work and you lost that game? And then, owners can say that all they're doing is just evaluating the coach, but owners read the papers, owners hear the fans. And so if the papers and the reporters are saying things that then the fans pick up on and they're echoing them and there's an uproar on that part, it's hard to keep a coach feeling good about his job security. And as a result, a lot of these guys, it's hard getting a NFL head coaching job. There's only 32 of them. And then even when you get one of those jobs, there's no certainty that it's going to be a good job. You might have your pick of a couple jobs. A lot of these guys don't. They get lucky. The owners go out there, or the GMs, they interview a bunch of people, and you don't have your choice of 2, 3, 4 jobs. You've got one opportunity, one place wants to bring you in, and they're the ones that are deciding to hire you. You either take it or leave it. But in other situations, even when you do have a choice, you don't know what that landscape is going to look like after a year or two. I mean, perfect example is look at Brian Daboll. He won Offensive Coach of the Year with the Buffalo Bills. He helped turn around Josh Allen's career. 2020, 2021, this team's winning all these games, scoring all these points, setting records. he gets the New York Giants head coaching opportunity, and he's strapped to Daniel Jones, who like we've seen his struggles, and now like Brian Daboll does not look good at all, even though he looked brilliant in Buffalo. So it's hard to have these jobs. I do agree with you. Teams need to be more aggressive. Teams need to punt the football less. One of the biggest things for me when I'm kind of game planning for games or talking to coaches is just emphasizing the importance of that opening script, how aggressive you plan to be in that first quarter of a game, because that drives so many things that end up happening. The NFL is there's so many less point scores than there are in basketball, right? You've got a touchdown, you got a field goal, and they don't happen all that much in games. And for you to go down the field on your opening drive and get 7 points and have a lead, and then maybe it's very easy to be tied or leading at halftime as a result. And what's your opponent doing in the second half? Becoming more desperate, playing very minus EV, making decisions they wouldn't ordinarily make that would be more difficult for your defense to stop and very unpredictable. Instead, they're becoming very predictable offensively because they are trailing, and it's easier for your defense, which is, like we said, they're already handcuffed based upon the rules construct. Now that defense it's easier for them. So like, that's why getting these leads is so important. And so I firmly believe that more teams out there need to get away from the old school thinking of, I don't want to lose the game early. Number one. Number two, I got to be careful with my young quarterback. We don't want to ask him to do too much early in the game. These types of things put your team behind the sticks, make it more difficult for your quarterback. When you're very cautious on early downs with a young quarterback, what's going to end up happening? Most of his pass attempts are going to come on obvious passing situations on third down where the defense is playing the pass. Whereas if you're trying to get out early and you're letting him throw the ball on first down when the defense might be playing the run, you have more opportunities to potentially score points, have dropbacks which aren't feeling pressure and being blitzed. And then you're in the second half with a lead or tied, and you're not scrambling from behind in obvious passing situations. So it all feeds off of one another. And I do think more teams need to figure out how, the Green Bay Packers, perfect example, how they flipped the switch middle of last season, got so much more aggressive early on in games. And if you recall, they even got so aggressive to the point, and I had written about this because I was very frustrated about the Green Bay Packers in the start of their season. So midway through, I started calling out all these things that they should be improving upon. And a couple weeks later, they started doing most of them. But one thing I did not mention that they took it to the next level was they started when they won the toss, taking the ball. Everybody pretty much defers. They're like time after time they won the toss. They were taking the ball. They were trying to go down and score points early to put themselves in a position of strength throughout the rest of that first half. So it was a lot of fun seeing them do that, but I wish more teams were as aggressive as they became.
Yeah, they nearly beat the Niners doing that, and the Niners' tendency is to defer, to try to lap the other team, to try to time up that first half score with getting the ball back, and that makes some sense. But if it's a playoff game and all of a sudden you're down 7-0, you can start to find yourself in a position where you're reeling.